Welcome back, everyone. We are following some really interesting breaking news. Donald Trump Jr. is responding to a New York Times accusation that he met with a Russian attorney about getting information, some dirt on Hillary Clinton during the campaign. And he met with that attorney being aware of the fact, or under the assumption, that she was working with the Russian government. Now, in response to that allegation, Donald Trump Jr. just moments ago released the email chain. He said he did it in the interest of transparency. You can see that right there. He actually tweeted out the email chain. That's his statement prior to tweeting out the chain, where he says, in the interest of transparency, I'm releasing the entire email chain of my emails with Rob Goldstone. Rob Goldstone is the first person to contact him, alleging to have some information that he might find interesting that would be damaging to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and we're all pouring through these emails, including CBS News Radio congressional correspondent Stephen Portnoy, who joins us by phone. Stephen, why don't you just start us off here? I'm really interested in what we saw on page 4 of the emails here, which not only implicates the highest judicial official appointed by President Putin himself in aiding the Trump campaign with, quote, information that would incriminate Hillary. What are you looking at?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this is an email from June 3rd of last year from Rob Goldstone, and it reads as follows. The Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with Emin's father, Aras, this morning. Now, Emin is a pop star in Russia, and his father is a major Russian oligarch. So the Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with Aras this morning, and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This, again, is an email from June of last year from a man named Rob Goldstone, who is a music publicist with whom Donald Trump Jr. and Donald Trump worked during the Miss Universe pageant in 2013. To recap, this email offers official government documents and information that the email says would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia. It describes this as very high-level and sensitive information, part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. In reply, Donald Trump Jr. writes just 15 minutes later, if it's what you say, I love it. A later email setting up this meeting with the Russian lawyer describes her as a Russian government attorney. This is all coming to light more than a year after this meeting. But what this indicates is that Donald Trump Jr. was promised official help from the Russian government, and he was very happy to have it. He said he would love it.
You know, Donald Trump Jr. has denied initially the New York Times article, and then his explanation has been evolving over the past few days. This email chain that he released seems to be backing up what the New York Times reporting has uncovered.
This proves the New York Times report this morning, Emery. The New York Times this morning had a front-page piece that suggested that Donald Trump Jr. was offered official government help in an email. We have now seen these emails. There's no more hiding. This is a complete and full disclosure. And the Times reports that Donald Trump Jr. posted these emails just moments before the newspaper was going to publish them online. So it seems as though the reporters and journalists forced Donald Trump Jr. into this disclosure. What you have to
go ahead, Steve.
What you have to remember is that this story started to bubble up on Saturday when the Times had inquired about a meeting that Donald Trump Jr. Did not previously disclose with a Russian lawyer named Natalia Veselnitskaya. Initially, Donald Trump Jr. said that this meeting was about adoption policy. That was on Saturday. Then Sunday, a further disclosure from Donald Trump Jr. said that it was about information that Trump Jr. was told would be helpful to his father's campaign. Then here it is Tuesday. We see the actual offer in which high-level, sensitive information is promised, that the Russian government in this email is said to have pledged its support for Mr. Trump, that it's a Russian government attorney with whom he'd meet, that it was information and documents that would incriminate Hillary Clinton. So all that we've been told up to now, as the story keeps evolving, as the White House has officially denied any kind of collusion, well, this would indicate that Donald Trump Jr., the son of the then presumptive Republican nominee, was offered official and direct help from the Russian government. Now, even if it wound up not being true, And that's what Donald Trump Jr. said this week, that it wasn't true, that the meeting was a waste of time, that they didn't get what they were looking for. What this indicates is that he was very interested in receiving that help and seemed to have been told at that time by someone he knew and had met through contacts in Russia that the Russian government was, at least as he knew it, was in position to help his campaign.
What does this mean, Stephen, for an administration that has over and over again denied that there were these contacts during the campaign?
Well, what this means is that more questions will continue to be asked. And already you're hearing Democrats on Capitol Hill said that they want to hear from Donald Trump Jr. as soon as they possibly can. This email is only going to add more fuel to the fire. I mean, you have to know what else, you have to wonder what else is out there, what else has not been disclosed. We still don't know the full anatomy of how this all came to light in the last 3 or 4 days. That's still a big mystery. But what this email indicates, and again, it's Donald Trump Jr. who's disclosing it because I suppose he knew that the New York Times was going to do it if he didn't. It indicates that, in fact, there was this meeting. It did happen because Donald Trump Jr. was told that there would be this Russian help. And so this is only going to prompt more questions about, what other contacts there might have been. We didn't know about this 4 days ago.
Yeah, he writes in his text, his sort of preamble before releasing the emails that, to put this in context, he says this occurred before the current Russian fever was in vogue, calling it a Russian fever, and said that, and then he quotes Rob Goldstone saying that the entire meeting was the most inane nonsense I ever heard. And I was actually agitated by it, sort of finishing up that tweet by generally dismissing the concern and interest that that many people have in this. And I think one of those questions, you say, there's more questions. One of the questions is going to be, if it was sort of the most inane nonsense, then why be so evasive about the truth?
That's a great point.
Why make up several stories until, if you believe the New York Times, you're forced to release this email chain?
If we believe, by the way, what Natalia Veselnitskaya said in an interview today, she told NBC News she never had any information on Hillary Clinton, that she was not working for the Russian government, and that all she wanted to do was lobby the Trump campaign against what's known as the Magnitsky Act, which, by the way, and it must be said, was something that Congress passed in 2012 in response to the Putin government's brutality and, in fact, a killing of political opponents. It was a fantastic 60 Minutes piece on this, by the way, in March of last year, which I suggest you look up because it really it digs very deep into the extent to which the Putin government went after and goes after political opponents.
Yeah,
and Congress passed this Magnitsky Act that sanctions individual Russians, and this lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, actively lobbied against it, and she sought to have the presumptive Republican nominee in her corner.
Yeah, and it really goes down to trust at this point, Stephen. Who do we trust? Somebody that has been associated with the Kremlin and could be, for all we know, working for the FSB there, or this government, which has said to the American people they had no contacts repeatedly during the campaign with Russian officials, but who clearly had contacts with people they thought were Russian officials. I would urge people to go back to listen to CIA chief, former CIA chief John Brennan's testimony in May, where he worried that the Russian government was trying to recruit surrogates within the Trump campaign, and suddenly a lot of this starts to make sense to us. Right. Stephen Portnoy.
I was going to say, I mean, we have Trump Jr. here, but we have a number of associates who forgot to maybe disclose some of their meetings, right? And we're talking about high-level associates. We're talking about Michael Flynn, Jeff Sessions, and most recently Jared Kushner, his son-in-law. I mean, sort of the list goes on and on, not on and on, but there's about 5 or so people, and this is just one more to add to that story.
And when it comes to the idea that you now have people who have been granted security clearances, people like Jared Kushner, who was in this meeting, who was copied on these emails, who was promised the same level of information from the Russian government, and when it goes to the disclosure of meetings along these lines, and the disclosures weren't initially made, it raises a whole bunch of new questions about the propriety of the form, and the accuracy of the forms, and whether these individuals have been forthright. And I think today will be an historic day when it comes to how this story is playing out, because it will speak to the credibility of these people and the statements that they've made which have clearly now been contradicted.
Yeah, I mean, it may just be sort of a matter of coincidences, but it's certainly what we're seeing is a very interesting pattern. Let's put it that way. Stephen Portnoy, thanks again for joining us.
You bet.
And of course, we're going to continue to cover this breaking news. Donald Trump Jr. responding to the accusation that he met with a Russian lawyer, knowing full well that this Russian lawyer may have been working for the Russian government. He has released a string of emails in an attempt to be transparent, and many of those emails seem to reinforce the New York Times story.